Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Couch Conversations with Kim. For those of you who are new to my show, my name is Kim Boone. I'm a licensed clinical therapist, certified master life coach, and I'm also a business coach. I have been doing this for 19 years, and I am excited to always talk about everything dealing with mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. This platform is designed for people to get awareness, to get help, to get healed, and to just have conversations with some of my friends to invite you into our world as it pertains to mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. My guest today is a new friend of mine, Miss Candace Wright. We actually met on Instagram, and it seemed like that's the place now for everyone to meet because of what's going on in the world. Social media is opening great doors for us, but she is someone that I admire. We're now following each other, admiring each other's work. And so I am hoping that one day I can look back 5 years from now and say, oh, my dear, dear great friend Candace, and 20 years from now, one of my long-term friends, because she is definitely someone who is special. But I'll let you introduce herself and then we'll get right into the conversation.
So, yes, first, Kim, thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you tonight. As Kim said, I'm Candace Wright. I am the mother of two boys, Bryson and Braxton. I am a mental health advocate. I received my education from Bowie State University, where I received my undergrad degree in psychology. And then I went on to Howard University, where I received my master's degree in social work. So I am currently studying to get my license as a licensed therapist. I love all things faith and mental health. I am also a minister, a licensed minister as well. So that is me in a nutshell. So yeah, let's get into it.
So I so love that you are also an HBCU grad, even though I
Yes.
graduated from Hampton, the real HU. We can fight about which HU is the best later on, but we won't bore the people with the rivalry. But today I'm super excited to introduce to the world your book. It is
Yeah,
called Breathe, Rest, Reflect, and Reset. And guys, this is really, really a great book and a must have. And it
thank
talks
you.
about mental health and suffering in silence and the
Yes,
spiritual aspect that needs to be brought into our suffering when it comes to mental illness. And I think
yes,
that you and your book, was something that I had to bring on my show because it's really like exactly essential to what I talk about. And I thought that you would be a great
for sure.
addition for this
Yeah,
topic. So let's
thank you.
talk about the book. Tell people what
Mhm.
it's about, why you were inspired to write the book, and then let's just talk about it from there.
Yeah, sure. So when God laid it on my heart to write this book, I was in the middle of a very depressive, season in my life. At that time, I was going through a painful divorce. I was battling with not only depression, but alcoholism. I was drowning my pain in alcohol. And I was suffering from, those tormenting thoughts that plague our mind, at times
Mhm.
where we're thinking the negative about every single thing in our life. Like I couldn't find a positive. And even in, like I said, I'm a mother. So even in my children, from the outside looking in, you would think, well, you have a positive, you're a mother, right? But in my mind, when battling those thoughts of suicide, I thought I was doing what was best for them by me not being here anymore.
Mhm.
So I just was wrestling with all of that. And Kim, like throughout my life, I've always wrestled with depression. I've always wrestled with anxiety. And I always reached out for external sources to self-soothe. So when I was younger and I was battling, depression and suicidal ideation, I turned to sex. And then as I got older, I turned to alcohol. And that is how I kind of was healing and coping as I thought. And
Mhm.
then I would throw myself into achievements and throwing myself into other people's pain, because I know what it feels like to feel alone and to feel like no one is listening and no one sees me. So I fully threw myself into my achievements, thinking that that was somehow going to heal all the trauma and pain
Mhm.
that I experienced. So I threw myself into, my education and I threw myself into ministry because I always knew that there was a call in my life. So I threw myself into ministry and I threw myself into all of these things and not realizing that I was just putting like a bandage on infected wounds with achievements. And it wasn't until I went through my recent divorce where it seemed like everything in my 32 years of life came to head. So all of the childhood trauma that I tried to sweep under the rug and I suppressed. So my past wounds and now my present wounds are colliding for the first time in my life. And I just couldn't breathe anymore. And it was just like, it's like the little girl in me met the grown woman. And like now we're sitting face to face with all of this pain and hurt. And it's like, what do we do with it? And in my mind, death was the only way. I just didn't have those tools because I was so busy throwing myself into other things. And that is how my book came about, because after my final, and I say final because I attempted to take my life 3 times in my life, in my teenage years, my 20s, and then as recent a year ago. And when I got to that place of thinking that suicide was my only option, Kim, I had a whole plan. I started like reviewing my life insurance for the boys. And I was just like, when I have that moment when they're not there, that's the time, the opportunity I'm going to take. And when I, attempted to take my life, which I realized in that moment of trying to leave my house, is that as soon as like my hand touched the doorknob, it's like I immediately felt regret. And what I realized in that moment is that I really didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. And I didn't know how to get to that point. And God said, if you trust me again, if you believe in me again, because a lot of times we talk about the natural trauma, we don't get into spiritual trauma. I'm like, God, I'm out here serving you. I'm out here doing, like, why is all of this happening to me? But what I realized is, Kim, I never survived or healed from anything that I've been through. I just survived it. I didn't heal from it. And that's how my book came about. God said, write out from here on out every single thing that I'm about to take you through, everything that you went through. And this book is like my healing journal. It really outlines all of my experiences and then what God did spiritually and also practically. So with my faith in him and with my therapist.
You have said so many powerful things that I don't even know where to begin to dissect it. But I first want to say, for everyone who is listening, this is a powerful testimony about wanting to take your life and not wanting to be here to help rid yourself of the pain. But like you said, it's not about not wanting to live. It's wanting the pain to stop. And I think if we stop and think about just that right there could possibly have saved so many lives from those who are watching and listening to us right now, recognizing that it's about alleviating the pain, not ending our lives. And if we could find a way, which we know God is the ultimate way, and then seeking a therapist and seeking someone who is a professional that can help us, that's how we can learn how to alleviate the pain. But in conjunction with that, you said something else that was so great, is that your past and your present world started to collide and they came together. And when that happened, that's when you was like, I can't take it anymore. And so often in our lives, we try to use all these things to brush under the rug and sweep aside the pain of the past, and not realizing that all we're doing is, as we're sweeping under that rug, we're just adding more stuff to that pile. And before we know it, that rug looks like a mountain, and we're trying to figure out how to climb. And
we're suffocating
because all this stuff is swept up under it. And if we keep getting in this place where we are, whether it's from fear, whether it's from what we've seen, whether it's from what we were told, what we heard, whatever it is that stops us from really processing things going on in our lives, we'll always be at the stand here where, rather than walking over a rug, we're climbing over a mountain because we're continuing to sweep things under it. So I thought that was extremely powerful. So talk about, for you, when you started that healing process, when you heard from God and you started seeing a therapist and start writing this book, what did that process look like? Because I think people feel like, okay, God gave me this revelation and now it's going to be great, but it's still pain involved.
No,
so
it's still
about that process for you.
So the process for me, it honestly is still ongoing. What it is that there was it was a signal, it was a switch to my brain that said, the fact that you're still living, the fact that you're still breathing, the fact that you still have a pulse, that means God has a plan. And I remember reading Jeremiah 29:11, where it talks about, God having a plan for us, and it's for good, and he's going to give us a good future. And what that showed me is that if God knows what's already ahead of me in my future, and he's telling me that it's good, then that means the sucky part of my life that I'm going through right now, I'm going to get through it.
Yes.
I just have to get through it, And I said, because I was already in therapy, I'm I was already in therapy, but the thing was, I wasn't believing anything that my therapist was saying, because my brain was so clouded with so much pain that it's just like, I heard the words, and even sitting in the pews, I heard the words, but I just wasn't believing them. And in that moment, God said, you have to believe in me again. And when I took his hand and I really just gave myself the space to not be okay, I took off all of the hats that I was wearing. I took off, and what I mean when I say I took off the hats, like the mommy hat, the minister hat, the sister, the everything that I am in life, and said, if I don't focus on Candace at this point in my life, there may not be me. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like I think we've been conditioned as women, specifically, that, we carry so much on our backs. We carry the family, and that's all I heard. Well, what about your boys? Well, you're being selfish, and you have to work, and you have to do all these things. And it was just like, well, dag, when am I ever having the opportunity to not be okay? Like, why do I have to be superwoman? Like, I'm not okay right now. So if I'm not okay, my boys are clearly seeing that their mother is in stress and distraught, and how can they possibly be well and healthy if what I'm doing is passing down to them? It just didn't make sense to me. Yes. And when it started not making sense to me, and I really started asking God like led me to Matthew 11 verses 28-30, where God is like saying, hey, like, are you burnt out? Like, take a real rest. And that's what I had to do. I had to step down from my ministerial position at, my church. I had to step down and say, hey, I can't pray over anyone right now, because I'm not even in my right frame of mind. Like, I have to focus on Candace right now. And you can call it selfish, you can call it whatever it is. But in my mind, I was being selfless, because I'm trying to preserve my life so I can get back up and do what God put me in this earth to do. And Kim, it was a journey, and it was painful. And the fact that I had, like I said, God, in order for me to heal and continue on my journey, I have to do it soberly. I was so used to drowning my pain in externals, like I said, alcohol, sex. And I got to a point where it's just like, even if I remove those things, now I'm drowning myself through achievements and throwing myself into ministry and everything else. And I said, God, I have to do this soberly. So I'm in like a few weeks, I'm about to celebrate like 1 year of being sober. I removed. Thank you. It's just like, I had to stop drinking. I had to stop smoking. I had to stop doing all these things and give myself permission to feel, give myself permission to cry. I was going through a divorce. No one gets married thinking they're going to get divorced, even no matter how it started, no matter what the foundation. No one gets married thinking, oh, I'm going to get married and do all of this just to get a divorce. No. And then I was going through things like my oldest son was being abused by his teacher. It was just so many things happening in my life. And like I said, on top of the childhood trauma that I never healed from. So I had to be intentional. I had to be in therapy weekly. I had to remove myself from those voices that didn't understand or wasn't equipped to carry the weight of my pain and my trauma. I had to get away from the people that told me to just suck it up and get over it. It's life, move on, because that was so minimizing to the pain that I was feeling. It was so dismissive. Yep. And now I'm already in my head. So you telling me that now I'm going to be in my head even more, thinking it's something wrong with me. It's just like, no, I have to give myself the same amount of love and grace that I give to others to myself. And I just literally had to sit and breathe and rest in my pain and trust God in the process to say, you're holding me through this, and I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to get on the other side of this. And for me, healing is ongoing. Like, even now, I'm still like, I have my moments. I have, those days where those painful memories resurface. But Kim, the difference is now I'm not reverting to my old ways of coping. Now I'm not picking up a bottle. Now I'm not automatically thinking my life sucks so bad that I have to take my life. Now I'm thinking, all right, Candace, this is just the moment that you can breathe through, that you have the resources, you have your therapist, you have those that you trust, that you feel safe with, that you could be vulnerable with and say, hey, this is what's happening in my life. And you know how to get through these moments in a healthy way.
Yes. And again, you said some great and powerful things. One of the things I want to touch upon that you said is how you started therapy, but you couldn't hear, you couldn't receive what she was saying. You're sitting in the pews, but you couldn't hear God. You couldn't receive what the preacher, the pastor was saying. And that right there is so important. We have to be ready to hear. And I think we don't recognize that. We make a decision that, okay, I'm going to go ahead and see a therapist and I'm going to let her tell me what to do. Or, okay, I'm going to go to church and try to hear from God. But if your mind is so clouded and flooded with the mental chatter, you cannot hear from the therapist, God, the pastor, the priest, nobody. You won't be able to hear because your thoughts now are so overpowering that nothing else can come in. And so we think that we're doing the right thing, which technically we are. We're taking necessary steps. But if we're not in a place where we're ready to be receptive and we're still battling with those things that's blocking us from that clarity, then it's purposeless.
That's so true.
And you use the word that I use all the time, which is intentional. That has been my word for the past, 6-7 months. And it's still my word now for 2021. We have to be intentional in everything that we do, even in our healing process. We have to want to heal. We have to be ready to go with whatever that healing takes us. We have to be able to deal with all the feelings that we will have to feel as a result. And we also have to be ready to do, like you said, to drown out everyone else that's trying to make us either do it their way or make us follow this process the way they think we should. And
that part.
And so sometimes I have to intentionally block people out. I have to intentionally remove myself from certain circles. I have to intentionally remove myself from certain things so that I can be clear on the way God wants me to heal and what my healing journey looks like.
I know you started reading my book, but that is exactly what this whole book is about. Like finding your healing journey. Like my journey is not going to be identical to yours. How God wanted me to heal is not going to look like yours. But the thing that I had to learn in this process is because I immediately went to family members and friends, trusted family members and friends with my pain. But what I realized, number one, everybody isn't equipped to handle the magnitude of what you have experienced. But then another thing is I realized what may be tolerable for you is terminal for me. And I always say that because our history is different. Our pain is different. Our trauma is different. Me and you both could have gone through a divorce. And for you, it could have been so freeing. You just bounce back. But for me, you don't know what triggered me. You don't know the trauma that resurfaced when this happened. So it's like we're so easy to put our mouths on other people's trauma. But what I had to realize in this moment is, God, how do you want me to heal? Because I can't heal like my auntie healed. I can't heal like my sister healed. Our DNA, our genetic, like our brains aren't even wired the same. So why would I think that that's gonna work? And it didn't work for me. And I tried it for so many months until I crashed. And when I crashed, I said, God, it's you and me, because I need to be here for my babies. I know that I have a purpose and that you have a plan for me. And if I have to cry every night until I get to that point, and I still, like I said, I still have my moments. It's just a difference. It's a difference in how I journey through those moments though. Like I'm very transparent in the fact that I like, even like a week ago, I had a panic attack. And what I realized in that moment was like, all right, Candace, let's get to the root of why you're feeling this way. And then once I got to the root of why I'm feeling that way, I did something about it. And I didn't wallow in it for weeks and months like I used to. It just was like a few days. And then I said, God, show me why I feel this way. Let me trust my body. Let me trust my mind. Let me trust my heart. And I got to the root of it and I prayed that thing through and I worked on it. And I said, okay, now I know that if I'm in this situation or in this space, it's going to be triggering to me. So even now, I still have to protect my wellness and I'm still learning. In 32 years, there's so many things that has transpired in my life that some things I am healed from. And I know, okay, in that area, God, I'm good. So let's now work on this because here I'm still struggling. It's a journey.
Yes. And it goes back to you being intentional about your healing now. That's the difference. You're intentional, what gives you that strength. Because now you're saying, okay, first of all, you're acknowledging that, yes, I'm having a panic attack. Something's going on. I'm not sure. Let me get to the root of it to figure out what the problem is. You're trying to identify the problem. And then you're acknowledging, I can't do this on my own. God, I need you to help me through this. Again, you're being intentional so that you won't stay in that place. And what happens so many times is we're not intentional. And so we get stuck in anxiety. We get stuck in depression. We get stuck in with these suicidal thoughts and don't know how to pull ourselves out of it because we don't have the strength and the intent. And not saying that you don't want to, you just don't know how to because you haven't gotten to that place. And so this is where, too, I think that it's very important to have this conversation because people think, well, oh, if she's saying she's a minister and, you know, she should know how to pray her way out. And we have,
you know how many times I heard that?
If you're in ministry, then why you need a therapy or why you depressed and why you can't have God just pull you out? Because I'm human, because I am a minister of God and of the gospel, but I'm not Jesus. So as a result, I still need him to help me. And so people need to understand that you can have therapy in Jesus. You can have therapy and God. You can be a minister and go see a therapist. Just because you have a calling on your life does not mean you don't have a struggle. Actually, the calling and the struggle go hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
Everybody who God calls has something, which is why he can use us because of the struggle that we had.
That we went through. And the thing that I had to learn, I got it on both sides. Like, Candace, you're a minister. You should know how to pray your way out this. Didn't you go get your master's degree in this? You should already know what the da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's just like, oh my God. When I say I heard that so much. And what people didn't realize is every time I heard it, it like killed off a piece of me, like a piece of my spirit. It just was just like chip by chip, like, see God, I told you, and that's why our words are so powerful. But what God showed me, and it was my therapist. I have to stress this. It was my therapist that showed me this. I was sitting on the couch one day and I was just beating myself up, Kim. I was beating myself up so bad because of that. I was like, I'm a minister. I'm this, I'm that. Like, why am I struggling right now? And it was like, I can't even think of the word right now to describe how I was feeling in that moment, other than I just felt voiceless. I felt like, and I was mad at God because of that. I'm like, yeah, God, like, you called me to this. I should know how to do X, Y, and Z. But my therapist was like, have you ever read, about the prophet Elijah? And I'm like, yeah, I know that he did this and this and that. Yeah. And she was just like, but have you ever studied him in his depressive state? The fact that he's, battled with depression, the fact that he had suicidal ideation. I was like, prophet Elijah, like the prophet that everyone talks and preaches about. And what that did for me was it showed me myself, and it showed me God, and how God is just so loving and so kind and so compassionate, that this great man, Elijah, who God just did so many miraculous things in his ministry, like Elijah raised the widow's son from his death through, God's power. Elijah saw, face to face what God could do, and he still wrestled with that spirit of depression and suicidal ideation. And what God did for Elijah was God gave him time to rest his physical body first. That was the first thing he did, because when you are battling those mental thoughts, it manifests itself physically. So
Yes.
now I'm not sleeping because I don't want to go to bed, because now I had nightmares and all of that stuff, I didn't want to sleep. So now it's like I'm staying up all night, or even when I do, it's like it manifests itself physically. So the fact that God gave Elijah time to rest, and then he gave Elijah time to reflect, and God did what therapists do our first, intake session. God asked Elijah a simple question: what are you doing here? What led you to this point?
Yes.
Don't we do that in therapy? That's the
Yes.
first thing we ask people.
The first thing. That's the
first. And when God,
there?
yes, and when God showed me that, I was just like, God, this is therapy, right? Like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, God, you just asked him what led him here? Why is he here? And what it showed me about God, all-knowing God already knew that question, but God wanted the words to come out of Elijah's mouth. God wanted to give Elijah time to put language to his pain. And that's what God did for me. He gave me that time to rest my physical body. He gave me time to be in therapy and to remove the roles that I had for this season. He gave me that time. And then after all of that, God gave Elijah an assignment. And that was so reassuring to me. It was confirming to me that it doesn't matter what I've gone through. Depression doesn't stop the calling on my life. Anxiety doesn't stop the calling on my life. Alcoholism doesn't stop the calling on my life. Me trying to take my life doesn't stop the calling on my life, because if God did it over 1,000 years ago for Elijah, the same God that did it for him did it for me. And that's why I'm so passionate about mental health and faith. And that's why when I hear people say, well, you're a minister and you're this, God was just like, just show them 1 Kings 18. Show them Elijah, what I did for Elijah, because I've done this before. And Elijah was still called. Like, God didn't throw, that in his face, was like, oh, you're a great prophet. Look at what I did on Mount Carmel with you. God didn't do any of that.
No.
But we do that to each other. But you're a minister. But then you go get your master's. God didn't do that to Elijah. So that's why I'm just so passionate about faith and mental health, because God showed us in his word that therapy is needed. Just like God gave us medical doctors, he gives us clinical therapists as well for our mental needs.
And I say that all the time. I tell people all the time, if you go to the doctor and you're diagnosed with whether it's hypertension, diabetes, cancer, whatever it is, you go to the doctor because something doesn't feel right within you. Your body feels off. Your body is at a dis-ease.
Yeah.
Which is how we got the word disease. And so it's like, so because something's wrong, I'm going to seek help. And then when you go to the doctor and seek that help, then the doctor gives you medication. He gives you maybe a exercise regimen, tell you how to eat, all these things, and you follow it. And it's the same way. Mentally and emotionally, your body is at a dis-ease. And so you go to the therapist so that they can help you work through those things, learn how to manage your thoughts, manage your emotions, and give you that same remedy and regimen to help you heal and move forward. And if people could just understand that and recognize that, so many of us will have all the tools that we need to keep pushing with those clinical tools and with those spiritual tools to keep going.
Yes.
All of my clients who come and seek me out for spiritual counseling, I say all the time, we have the greatest weapons that other people don't have, and that's Jesus Christ. You already have one step ahead of the healing process. You have to just add him along that journey. And that's very, very important that people don't understand. The combination of the two is so powerful that you You cannot lose. Even when you try to, God will reach his hand down and pull you back up and say, my child, I have you. So I love this. Like you said, I'm very passionate about mental health and spirituality and just bringing those two worlds together and bridging the gap and helping people to understand that when we combine the two, we have a weapon that's so powerful that our journey to healing will have to start immediately, because you won't want to stay in that same place.
Yeah, and I think it's so profound that you said all of that, because that is what saved my life. Like, having my faith, having God, and having my therapist, along the way, is like having both of those principles, the biblical and the clinical principles, to say, hey, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay. And Candace, I still love you. I still love you. And I think my mind went to, because I wasn't coping well, that God is angry at me. He's mad at me that, I'm this minister, I'm this person, I'm this and this and that. And God's just like, I never called you to have it all together, because if you had it all together, Jesus wouldn't have had to die for you in the first place. So clearly we're okay. But I had it had to, my brain, my mind had to be reminded of that, because trauma can give you amnesia. It can give you spiritual amnesia.
Yes.
Like if you think about a physical like blow to your body, like the trauma that your body can experience, and then it's like you can blank out. Like when you go through so much trauma and abuse and pain, you can have spiritual amnesia that you forget what God has already brought you through, because the pain is so blinding and it's so great. And like I said, I felt like my past trauma and my present trauma was colliding. And you think about, like, you were saying how we sweep everything under the rug, and you can think about like a dirt, like you can think about dust, like a pile of dust under the rug. And once you take that rug off, you're gonna be like,
yes,
because of all of that dust, you're gonna choke. And that's how I felt. I just felt like I was suffocating, and I was tired, and I was like, God, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. But the moment that I realized, just by, studying Elijah's story, and that's what my book is on, is like part Bible study on, Elijah's journey, and then interlaced with mine. And it was just like reading Elijah's story really like saved my life, because it's like I saw myself, like in Elijah, I saw myself, and I said, God, thank you. Thank you for showing me that it's okay not to be okay, that I don't always have to hold it together, and that no matter what I have gone through and will go through, it'll never change your mind about me. And I think that gave me so much peace and comfort to know, like, you'll never change your mind about me.
I love that. And I think that's a great place to end, because it's time to wrap up. But I love that God will never change his mind about us, no matter what we do, no matter what we go through. He already knows anyway. And so he's waiting for us to come back to ourselves, and then come back to him, so and come back he can heal us and make us whole. And then we can truly live out our God-designed purpose. Candace, this conversation was so great. I am
Thank you for having me.
That you agreed to come on Couch Conversations with Kim. We're gonna have to do this again, another capacity, or the next season of Couch Conversations with Kim, something, because this is powerful. Guys, please get this book, Breathe, Rest, Reflect, Reset, by Candace Wrights. She not only talks about her journal, but she gives you scriptures. There's journal and writing prompts in here. There's exercises for you. So it's not just something to read, it's actually something to really help you jumpstart your healing journey. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Couch Conversations with Kim. Thank you for being a loyal listener, and for subscribing to my YouTube channel. If you are watching for the first time, please hit the subscribe button for Mental Chatter TV. You can follow me on Instagram at mental_chatter. You can follow me on Facebook at Mental Chatter 219, and you can follow me on Twitter at bNicoleKimberly. I thank you guys. I love you all. Thank you again, Candace. See you next time for another episode of Couch Conversations with Kim. Bye.